Even a Halloween skeleton can run afoul of a community's moral codes. This is the focus group.
They're all business, except when they're not. It's the Focus Group with Tim Bennett and John Nash.
Welcome to the Focus Group. John Nash here with my good friend and co-host Tim Bennett. FocusGroupRadio.com is the website that you can go to and learn all about us and our partners. And you'll also learn about TFG Unbuttoned, our Tuesday audio podcast. 3 stories that we bring to you each week. Usually, they're very diverse. I'll just put it to you that way. Usually very diverse. And of course, you'll learn about our partners there. And in the case of the Focus Group, it would be Deep Discount, who we'll be visiting with later in the broadcast. So, Mr. Bennett, we are officially in November. I saw this thing the other day. It just made me gasp. It was like, here's how many days to Thanksgiving. Here's how many days to Christmas. Here's how many days to New Year's. And I was like, it's like 30, it was like bothersome to me.
Well, Halloween's over nowadays, so it's full throttle. It's full press now. And I had somebody ask me about putting up the Christmas tree, which I know during the pandemic a lot of people did early, but I'm not. I don't plan on to put the Christmas tree up.
We went to Home Depot this past weekend to pick up just some minor stuff, like some antifreeze for our outdoor, the guest house. Right. We were shutting down the plumbing. The minute we walked in, we were assaulted by moving characters, reindeers, Santas, Christmas trees. There was Black Santa. There was White Santa. I like Black Santa better, even though the two of them sound identical. Ho, 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 welcome to our home. Let me sing you a song.
What is it, a blow-up thing, or what was it?
It was like a big mannequin, like a plastic mannequin.
Or did you get one?
No.
You should put them all on your porch. You should get them and put them all on.
$298. You buy every one of them. The Rudolph.
Put them on the porch. Yeah, put them on the porch. Put them on the roof. Strap them to the roof. They'll be worth money someday, like those blow molds. Somebody had shown on one of these sites those... When we were growing up, the toy soldiers or the soldiers are those things that were about 3 feet tall and Santa that you'd strap to the chimney. They're worth hundreds of dollars now. There was a woman. I was up at this place in Lancaster County where they do these, where our friend Bruce has his antique place. And this woman has a Christmas shop. That's all she does is Christmas year round. She was all upset. She had a whole truckload of blow molds offered to her for $300 and she didn't take it.
$300.
$300. She was packed with new, like vintage stuff they were clearing out a warehouse from the 60s. And she's kicking herself she didn't get them because the blow molds are in demand. She goes, people are buying them. The 50-year-olds are buying them.
Old Christmas stuff, sure.
Yeah. Which I thought, I'm sure we have a blow mold somewhere. I don't know.
Non sequitur to the holidays. Some listener feedback. One of our listeners, Brian, who actually was one of our Criterion winners, he got more than one film. He sent an interesting note in about, we've been talking, now and then you and I talk about EVs and about some of the issues that may pop up with them. In particular, he mentioned that our concern, or we've talked about in the past, some of this issue of replacing batteries. Mm-hmm. And he actually brought up a great point that many of the manufacturers have long warranties on their batteries. 8 years or 100,000 miles is not an unusual warranty. And in most cases, the need to replace a battery is rare, and it usually is because of an accident. So if you're, and he's an EV driver, and I think he's expecting his third, so quite happy. And a couple listeners also chimed in with how they were really pleased with the vehicles. And one of them said, every time you go to sleep at night, the car gets a full tank. Because when you think about it, you're charging it up, so in the morning you're getting a full tank. So I guess it's a situational-based thing, right?
Well, if you have a lease, but it then goes back to eventually the battery will need to be replaced.
At some point in time.
So even if it is a lease and you get rid of it after 3 years and you haven't put 100,000 miles on it, the next owner or the next person, are they going to want to invest $25,000 in a 6-year-old car that's in otherwise great shape? You'd have to figure that's where you really have to figure it out, because unlike areas in California where we don't rust, things don't rust. I mean, in the Northeast, if you have a car that doesn't have rust after 10 years, you're pretty lucky, or a rust spot or something.
That was something you and I, just cars in general, like obviously cars made of metal. Like I think when I learned early that California, because of the environment and the air quality, there are cars out there that from the 60s, like they were pristine condition because they didn't have the elements destroying them.
Yeah. So I understand there certainly is the EV. There's lots of backlash now with EV. Well, I don't know if it's consumer backlash, but all these companies that were charging ahead with we're going to be full electric
Yeah.
are rethinking it. General Motors is rethinking it. Honda's no longer doing their association with General Motors to build the cars. People are scaling back because they're not being sold in the quantities people thought they were being sold in. And the technology probably got ahead, or the excitement got ahead of the technology and the reality. So I don't know. We'll see.
It sort of skipped over the whole hybrid thing, right? I mean, when I look at hybrids, the gas electric motor, they seem to make a lot more sense because the gas is the fuel you need when you can't
Right.
charge, right?
Right.
And when you can charge, you obviously put the electric into the car. So I think it's going to be obviously it's an ongoing thing, and it's going to be an interesting consumer choice for you and I a couple of years from now when it's time to change out the cars. I wonder how the infrastructure will have changed by then.
Well, where it's rare for, there have been times where, particularly again in the Northeast, whether it's a major accident or there's weather, where you could be stuck for 4 hours on a road or 6 hours. And
Yeah.
if you don't have a full charge, what
Could
happens?
be a problem.
Yeah, what happens? So
Just take Bob and I coming back from the house a couple months ago. We were stuck on the Henry Hudson
was it?
Parkway. They just closed the road because of spontaneous flooding, and we were stuck 4.5 hours sitting in the same spot in the car. You can't tell me that everybody, yeah.
I guess you'd shut the car off, just conserve.
A lot of people
conserve the
did,
power,
and then you saw people opening the doors, doing the bathroom
but
thing.
the heat.
Yeah.
Yeah, so no, I understand people. There certainly is and I would guess electric cars are the future, and I love electric cars.
Oh, yeah.
I just am not sure that I would want to invest a large chunk of money if I needed a battery, and that's where I think they have to figure this piece out. The manufacturers have to figure it out.
It's going to be a man. Yeah, you're right.
Is how do I make that palatable for me to buy a battery? So
To replace or to buy, yeah.
even if you were in an accident. As the listener said. So,
And that's the whole thing of insurance. Will insurance cover that? Blah blah. Well, hey, evolving thing. But I'm glad that a lot of our listeners are enjoying their EVs, and really, and you and I loved the ones we test drove. I was just like, could this be the car every day?
yeah.
So, if you're new to the show, we do a little catch up as we've just done. We have a segment called Caught Our Eye, and we visit with our partner Deep Discount. Take a quick break. We check in with Tim and the Business Birthday, the only show in the universe that does that. And we're wrapping up with a shop talk today on older gays telling younger gays how it used to be in the dating world back before the apps. So without further ado, Mr. Bennett, what caught your eye?
What caught your eye? Here's what Tim and John found.
There are a number of things that I had found, although this one I scratched my head over. So the headline is San Francisco's $700 a month sleeping pods face a crackdown from city inspectors, report says. So there's a facility that used to be a brownstone. It's called brownstone shared housing, and this is in San Francisco, downtown San Francisco, and people are delighted that they're able to get these $700 a month pods. They're sleeping pods. They're stacked. If you're watching the video, John will show the picture, but they're stacked very much like IKEA beds, and is what they call them, IKEA style. So there's nothing that's actually attached to the building. So this is where the fight is. The city says you have illegal living quarters. The people at Brownstone say not really, because we're not attached to anything, which is what the planning commissioner, what the building inspector would say in terms of zoning. So it's a little bit of a fine line there. But the permit, they have 28, so Brownstone Shared Housing filed a permit for this 28 bunk style housing pods for people in the city. They're 4 feet by 3.5 feet, about the size of a twin bed.
Oh my God.
And what's happened is people are renting these for $700, and then there's a shared space. So there's a shared living
room.
area, living
Yeah.
room, and they all share a bathroom. And so these have been very successful. The company says it rents the pods out to tech startup founders and other industry workers who cannot afford the rental prices in the San Francisco Bay Area, which is the most expensive real estate in the country, they said. The Mint Plaza location in Soma, for instance, where you would want to live in San Francisco, you would have to, at a minimum, shell out $3,400 a month for a one-bedroom in that neighborhood, which is just a okay place. So they talked to this guy that is excited that's rented one of these $700 a month pods, and his name was, I think his name was Christian. But anyway, he was excited by the fact because he said otherwise he had held off on moving from Illinois to the Bay Area. He's starting working for an AI company, artificial intelligence company. And he said that he was going to either have to figure out some other sort of living quarters, but this pod for $700 a month showed up, and he said it was a godsend. It allowed him to move to California and start his high-tech business and not break the bank. So he's very excited about it and hopes that they stay around and stay in business. He said even though it's the size of a twin bed and not very large, it gets the job done. Really, all you just need is a place to sleep.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm.
He said, just as first, they asked him how it's been living in this kind of communal atmosphere, because essentially you're sleeping in this closet, right? And then you mix in with people. He said, just in the first couple of days, I met some of the smartest people I've met in my entire life. This is one of the reasons I've come to San Francisco and why I'm living and staying the way I am. It says Zillow, just then they do a sidebar, and it says, this is why I'm living in a pod. It says a recent report by Zillow, however, found that rents are starting to fall in San Francisco because the city's been beset by rising crime and an exodus of companies. I don't know. When he says he met some of the smartest people he's ever met, I'm not so sure you're so smart.
You read my mind. I'm like, okay, when did this occur? Like when he's in one of the stalls, hey, could you toss me a roll of clean toilet paper? I mean, this is the whole thing about this communal living, right? It's shaving, showering, going to the bathroom. You're in the living room. I guess everybody's on headphones and watching their laptops as if they were TVs. I mean,
it's like a hotel, but no, Japanese has these little pod
hostel.
things.
It's like a hostel, right?
And Japan, you're exactly right, John. That's exactly what it's like. Except the hostel, you might have a bunk bed. I often want, these obviously aren't private. I was trying to figure out how they closed. I couldn't actually see in the pictures. Is it just a curtain? Or is it a door like you would have on a train and a little, you'd be in a little compartment
like a sleeper
on a train.
car.
Sleeper car.
Yeah.
So I was trying to figure this out, but I thought, man, people's sleeping habits are nasty.
Mm-hmm.
Snoring, burping, farting. So you have to get up and use the bathroom at night. Who knows what's going on in this place? I'd be curious to take a look. See what's going on at night. But imagine spending $700 just for that.
You read my mind, because then I thought, okay, so where are you eating? If there's no kitchen and you're not buying your groceries and you're eating out, you're not saving money there, right? No. If everything you do is takeout, you're not saving money. So let's say you had, I don't know, $400 or $500 a month. Is that even reasonable? Is that too low, too high for groceries or for food?
Well, you'd have to guess in San Francisco a minimum breakfast. Say you only do $2 meals. Yeah, but minimum would be 10 for a breakfast, right? If you grabbed a bagel and a coffee or a juice or tea or something. Mm-hmm. But lunch or something, it's got to be $30 for lunch.
Be.
New York City, you and I could not go out, two of us, for lunch for under $60. And we didn't drink. We weren't extravagant. We'd get a salad or...
Our extravagance was the brownie at the brownie dessert.
I love that brownie. Croton on the Hudson.
The Croton Reservoir.
That's still, I was telling Richard that the other night. That is still, we were at a restaurant that had a brownie sundae like that. It was a brownie with the whipped cream and the walnuts. Mm-hmm. Oh, that's a good sundae. That was a good
The waiter
dessert.
knew us, and he got socks out of the deal, too. So.
That was a good dessert.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that.
So this one, I'm hey, look, I guess it's still coming in under $3,400, but there you go.
Well, if you would move to, I know in New York City, one of the issues was with a lot of people when we were getting out of college, people would share maybe a one bedroom, right? Yeah. If you were in a really nice area, non-rent controlled or something, you'd share one bedroom. And instead of having the quote unquote living room, maybe you put a bed in there, or you just both put your beds in the one bedroom, right? In order to live in Manhattan. But you always had your own bedroom and stuff. You never had to go that.
No. Even with roommates, we always had our own rooms. I mean, Greg, like when I lived with Greg, he would never have tolerated the idea of like
Sleeping
just pull a
together.
curtain. It's your magical bedroom.
So you were able to figure it out, and that's what I was wondering about San Francisco. And I've met some of the smartest people I've ever met. Really?
Well,
We're living in these pods.
Here's economics history. When I moved to the city when I graduated college, Greg and I had a 2-bedroom apartment in a brownstone building with a fireplace and a galley kitchen. I think the rent was $638 a month.
Oh my God!
Divide
what was that? 1810. $638 a month.
Yeah, it was certainly last century. It was a rent stabilized apartment. We knew the super and the landlord. So,
God, you should have kept it. You'd still be in it. It'd probably be $1,000 now.
it wasn't a bad place. It wasn't a bad place. Yeah, it was a little small, but hey, we had a big living space. It was cool.
You were paying less than I was in Philly. 300 and something.
Think about that.
That's
so
ideal.
then you could go out and you could go to the bars, you could see friends, go to movies. I mean, this is what you did, right?
Yeah.
Besides that, what did you do? What do you do for fun?
You do for
Anyway.
fun. Movies, friends.
So what caught my eye was what I led the show off with, and leave it to people to get all up in arms about something as ridiculous as this. Pole dancing skeleton causes uproar in Utah town. So, residents of Grantsville,
What a great
Utah,
picture.
are buzzing over another local's hilarious Halloween display. According to an Instagram post shared by local news outlet The Ogdenite, city officials of the Utah town were not happy with one resident's cheeky skeleton set up outside of their home. So this guy set up a bunch of skeletons. One of them is pole dancing. And they're skeletons, right? And it's a funny scene, but the town is not happy. The city addressed their message the city addressed their message to the person responsible for this display. You have until 9 p.m. tonight, October 18th, to take down your decorations or they will be removed by the cities.
Oh.
Displays like this are not acceptable as it is against city code to attach anything to a street sign. There's the ripple, right? So while the city officials may not have been amused, users in the comments section could not get enough of this comical decoration. So people would the laughing emoji. One person actually said, would it make a difference if we put a bathing suit on the pole dancing? Only in Utah, right? Like, it's just a bunch of skeletons.
So is that so that is an actual street sign then? See, I thought
Yes,
that was...
apparently the pole that the skeleton is dancing on is in fact a corner. It's a street sign. So this guy set up, if you're not watching on our video, this guy took like 3, these folding camp type chairs, and in the chairs he put, or there's 2 of them, he put these 2 skeletons that are facing kind of up looking at the pole dancer. The skeleton that's pole dancing is upside down. There's like a tutu with some lacy thing around its waist covering. It's totally hilarious and just kind of like, I would.
You know what else I noticed here is they were very creative there. They should spend a little time on their lawn if that's their lawn.
You saw the dirt?
The dirt. It's just a dirt. That's Utah. Isn't it?
Tim, this reminds me of lurid digs.
Yeah.
You and I are looking at everything but the skeletons, right? You're looking at the house, the fence.
Who would have that rug?
Tim once turned me on to a site called luriddigs.com. I don't even think it's up anymore, maybe.
Sadly.
It was these decorators, these guys would take profile pictures from gay dating sites, and they would critique the background.
The home decor.
You'd have some guy in a harness, and behind him was a bed with a flower, duvet and teddy
and
bears.
Picture of
everywhere.
grandma on the nightstand.
And the nightstand, yeah. And so it was such a hilarious, and Tim, it's so you to have found this. When Bob and I, when you told us about it, we went crazy over Lurid Digs.
It was a great site. We should
So
bring that
Tim's
back.
pulling a Lurid Digs. If you're watching on video, he's basically, there's no lawn in front of this house, it's just dirt.
It's just dirt.
And then there's the skeletons pole dancing.
There was a similar thing. There was a kid. I was going to do it on our on TFG Unbuttoned on our Tuesday podcast. There was a kid that was kicked out of a football game last weekend for wearing a penis costume. It was in Sam Houston college football game. Like the kids that would wear the blow up like dinosaur or whatever, and the head would move.
I've seen.
So this kid was in a huge penis, and he got kicked out of the football game because it wasn't appropriate for his Halloween costume, but the crowd was going wild and quite.
And they loved it.
Oh, it was hilarious. It was one of these huge things, and it was bopping around. They had the 2 big balls in the front. And
To wrap up the pole dancing skeleton. The owner of the display did remove it he set it up on his lawn further in, and he didn't use the city street sign, so apparently he passed muster, and if you live in that part you could have seen the pole dancing thing. The penis costume, I've only seen that once before, and I can't remember where. It's like when people dress as a T-Rex, right?
Yep.
It's the
Same
blow-up
exact thing. So this was a giant penis, and he took it he wore it at the football game because everybody was to dress in costume, and he was kicked out. He was quickly ejected, they said.
I don't know why people don't get like 5 stars for originality for that one, right? I mean,
it said the headline, "He was quickly ejected. He got too cocky," said one.
headless body, topless bar.
Right.
Got too cocky.
He's too cocky. So,
All right, folks. As many of you know, Deep Discount is a partner of ours here on the Focus Group, and we invite you to visit their site by going to ours.focusgroupradio.com and clicking on the Deep Discount logo. It's going to take you into a world of movies, TV, books, games, figurines, you name it, they've got it. And when we go there, Tim and I go down the media rabbit hole for sure. And we are really pleased because November is beginning of the site-wide sale, winter site-wide sale. So that means we have free range to go wherever we like on the Deep Discount site and to find our favorite titles. So what did you pick, Mr. Bennett?
So I've mentioned this movie before. Actually, there was a sale we had celebrated at Deep Discount called "In the Location is in the Name," or the name is. And this movie was not there. I looked for it specifically, and it's called Nebraska. So I figured it would have been part of that. So they either missed it or it didn't qualify. But it's a movie I talked about before, and I did find that it is currently, of course, on sale at Deep Discount on DVD for under $13. And it says Academy Award winner Alexander Payne, who's also the director of Sideways, which is another movie that I really liked.
That was the wine movie with Paul Giamatti, right?
Yeah.
Love that movie, yeah.
So they said that critics had called this an American masterpiece. It involves a father who's played by Bruce Dern and his adult son who embark on a journey to claim $1 million prize, which they thought was going to be a fool's errand, but it ended up being what they call a road trip to redemption. It says it's one of those movies you'll watch over and over again. And so I always like adding those sort of movies to my collection because they're things you won't get tired of. The other thing about this movie, shocking to me, is I never see it replayed anywhere. You know, sometimes
good point. Good.
Sometimes
you mean like
there's
on
movies,
TCM or
or sometimes on some of the pay channels you might wander through and find something. You know, I like Fried Green Tomatoes. I usually stop and watch that, or I'm sure you with a lot of your sci-fi things. Even though you could probably in your sleep recite it, you'll watch it. You know, because it's just,
this movie also though. The premise of the movie also hit close to home for you as well because doesn't the main character in this movie think he's won the lottery? And
he thinks he won the Publishers Clearinghouse giveaway.
And didn't your dad think he won?
Oh, my dad was convinced. It was during. I remember it was during a Super Bowl one year. He kept looking out the window because they kept saying
the
van's on its way. The van's coming. You know, there was these commercials. You know, Publishers Clearinghouse. Someone has won. And then I find out from my mom that he actually had been filling this thing. I didn't buy any magazines, but he was filling out the thing, and they kept saying, "You're close, you're close, you're down to one of the top 25, whatever the number was." It was all absurd, of course, and that's what happens in this movie. That he's convinced he should have won, and so he tells his son he's going to go out to the headquarters, the Publisher Clearinghouse headquarters, or whatever they called it in the movie, and which happens to be in Nebraska. So they start this trip cross country, the son and the dad, and
the movie's shot in black and white, right?
Yeah, it's all black and white,
which I think adds another whole dimension to it, like an authenticity, almost like a newsreel kind of thing.
But I remember trying to explain to my dad that he was convinced, because they told him he had won. It says you're a winner. You open it up and he had all the stuff there, and all you have to do is do this and send it back, and then they tell you again you made the next level. I don't think those things happen anymore.
Publishers Clearinghouse still does its thing, but
maybe it's online now. I don't know.
No, my mom, she whenever I visit her, she loves the mail, and she still gets that stuff in the mail.
Does she open that stuff or just throw it away?
No, she puts it aside. She's like, "Honey, nobody wins," and she just puts it aside. Just, "Honey, nobody wins." I'm like, "Yeah, Mom, I know."
Although your mom, if you remember as a sidebar, one time you and I were pulling a prank in town and your mother said, nobody will ever print that. We did a letter to the editor, remember?
Local paper.
And your mother's laughing. She goes, nobody's going to read it. It was so absurd what you and I wrote. And she said, nobody's going to print that. And sure enough, it was in next week.
She was shocked and she loved it. She loved it. All right. I picked a movie that many have seen, but I think it's worth rewatching. It's almost 20 years old if it's not celebrating its 20th anniversary now. And it's The Nightmare Before Christmas, which is, the stop motion movie by, it's released by Disney, but this is Tim Burton's The Nightmare Before Christmas. When it came out, if you actually Google some of the reviews when it came out almost 20 years ago, it was a movie that was respected for the craftsmanship, and they thought it was an original and clever story, but it wasn't like a favorite. It's grown over the years to become this kind of Halloween cult classic movie, and now you go by people's houses and there's Jack Skellingtons. And, I watched it recently on a restored copy on Blu-ray. It sparkled. It was beautiful. And the artistry of stop motion puppetry to me is always something I've loved. Both Tim and I grew up with Davy and Goliath, Gumby and Pokey, and these are all stop motion things, right? So, and even my nieces grew up with Wallace and Gromit. So I'm attracted to the art form, but I also think the story and the idea is hilarious of Jack Skellington falling into Christmas land and what happens when you mash up Christmas and Halloween. So I recommend The Nightmare Before Christmas. And our new release this week is Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning Part 1. I feel like FOMO, like fear of missing out. Like a lot of folks I know tell me that I'm missing out on the Mission Impossible movies and that they're really well done and the action sequences are great. So I need to hop on the Mission Impossible bandwagon. But this is the latest, and it got great reviews. And Tom Cruise did, in fact, do most of his own stunts in the movie, which is amazing.
Yeah, people do talk about these too.
Mm-hmm.
They do, as much as Tom Cruise may have been maligned in the press over the years for his Scientology beliefs. They do give him lots of credit for these Mission Impossible franchises, and I've not seen any of them. I must admit, I don't.
Neither have I. And friends will say, "Are you crazy? They're on all the time, whatever." So I need to start from the first of his movies and move through the Mission Impossible catalog and see what they're like. Because as a kid, I loved the original TV show with Leonard Nimoy, the whole bunch. Yeah. This is different, obviously, but I think it's well worth seeing. So that's the new release this week, on sale for $29.99, 4K and Ultra HD copy.
So head over to focusgroupradio.com, click on the deep discount logo, start shopping away. You'll be able to own your passion over there. I picked this week a movie that I loved called Nebraska, which also reminded me of my dad. John picked The Nightmare Before Christmas, which, that's our friend Matt's one of his favorite movies, too. Okay. And the new release this week is Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning Part 1, with, of course, starring Tom Cruise. So we need to watch those, Mr. Nash. We hope all of you support them by going to focusgroupradio.com and supporting Deep Discount by clicking on their logo. Start shopping away. It's a perfect time during their site-wide sale to start shopping for the holidays and add to your collection or to somebody else's. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we've got a business birthday and a little shop talk, so stay with us.
You're listening to The Focus Group with Tim and John. Learn more at focusgroupradio.com. Now back to The Focus Group with Tim and John. Available pretty much everywhere.
Welcome back to The Focus Group. John Nash with Mr. Tim Bennett. FocusGroupRadio.com is our site. You'll learn all about us there, including our partners, Deep Discount, which we just had a fun segment with. And there you go. That's all you need to know. Oh, you also learn about TFGM Button. But if you are already following us, that's probably popping up in your podcast feed of choice. So without further ado, the only show in the universe that does this, our business birthday.
Everyone does celebrity birthday greetings, but the Focus Group is the only show in the universe that celebrates business birthdays.
It's already November 1st. Can you believe it? So celebrating today, born in 1863. November 1st, 1863, is George Safford Parker. Did you know George?
I know his products well, and I love this business birthday, so continue.
So George was an American inventor and industrialist, but in reality really was the founder and the inventor of the Parker Pen Company, and also was one of the first to get a patent on a fountain pen. So as we said, he was born November 1st, 1863 in Shullsburg, Wisconsin. And he worked for many years in Janesville, Wisconsin, for telegraphy. And so he would send messages or whatever. This is pre, Morse code or anything.
So he was a telegraph operator?
Yeah.
Okay.
But he had a sideline business repairing and selling fountain pens. So there was an issue with fountain pens of constantly leaking ink or getting dry, and they were unreliable. So he would work on these fountain pens, fix them up, particularly for kids in school, and then get them back to them. And he thought, well, I should go into business doing this. So in 1888, he founded the Parker Pen Company. And the following year, in 1889, he received his first fountain pen patent. In 1894, he also received a patent for something called the Lucky Curve fountain pen. And it actually had a feed in it, which would draw excess ink back into the pen barrel when it was not in use. So that way it wouldn't leak or it wouldn't blot or smudge. It said it was the first successful pen launch. First company in 1899 was called the Parker Jointless. And so this Lucky Curve technology he did was found in many of his pens in various forms. They set up through 1928. The factory was in Janesville, Wisconsin. And at the time in 1908, when he built the factory, it was the largest pen manufacturing facility in the world. And Parker became one of the world's premier pen brands and one of the first brands with a global presence. They said from 1920s to 1960s, before the development of the ballpoint pen, Parker was either number one or number two worldwide in instrument sales. He also invented something called Quink, which was quick drying ink, which also eliminated the need for blotting. He also developed the most widely used fountain pen model in history in 1941, called the Parker 51, which sold over $400 million worth of sales in its 30-year history. That's an awful lot of pens. He had grew to have manufacturing facilities in Canada, the UK, Denmark, France, Mexico, Pakistan, India, Germany, Brazil, and Argentina. And so throughout the Parker pen history, which is still in existence today, they had all kinds of different ingenious ways of creating pens and different pens and smaller pens and using plastics and nylons, all kinds of things. The company was eventually sold to Gillette, which I was surprised about. And they ended up selling it to Newell Rubbermaid. And they moved the headquarters out of the U.S. to England. So it's currently in England right now. But also part of the conglomerate that has liquid paper and Papermate and Sharpies and so forth. He died in the hospital, it said, after a short illness at 73 years old. In his obituary, it said, Mr. Parker was the leading manufacturer of pens, pencils, and ink in this country, and from time to time would also experiment with other forms of fountain pens. He was instrumental with also introducing varying colors of ink and was the first to make red ink popular in a fountain pen. He introduced that in 1949, so we could thank him for red ink, which I'm actually using today. I got a red
All right,
pen.
so when you were, Parker was like the gold standard in pens. And I remember once I was given a pen and pencil set by Cross, was it? Mm-hmm. Cross Pen and Pencil. But then I also received a Parker pen that same year, and it was clear from the weight of it. And it was just one of my favorite writing instruments. So I think this is really cool. And I never knew the story behind this. So, I love writing stuff.
They also have, they had something called there's also still a line of pens called the U.S. Presidential Parkers. It was the favorite pen of President Kennedy.
Really?
And they said he used it for signing legislation. He also gave them a lot as gifts. They said presidents from Kennedy to Clinton used Parker pens for most of these purposes whenever they would sign legislation. You see them make a small little line or something. So they said, for instance, Lyndon Johnson gave over 60,000 Parker pens away
60,000?
for people who would visit the White House and so forth. And they said he would use up to 75 pens to sign each document and bill. So he would just do a stroke, put down the pen, do a stroke. So Lyndon Johnson was a huge fan. Kennedy, Clinton as well. There's actually a Bill Clinton Parker insignia set that you can still find. And
This makes me want to go out and buy a Parker pen.
they said now, though, however, after Parker ceased to be an American-owned company, of course, later presidents had to switch. And now they use, which you mentioned earlier, AT Cross pens, which are still made in the U.S. So no longer the Parker pens. But after Clinton and the company moved to England, they were in England and France, but in England currently, that they've switched over to Cross pens now for signing documents. So.
Wow. Excellent business birthday. And this is, for me, especially because I love writing implements, it's just great to know, how this came about. And it was this guy, right? It's very cool.
Well,
Very
built
cool.
a better mousetrap, right? So he
Built a better mousetrap.
Yeah, he fixed the issues that people had struggled with pens. You don't think of anything that simple, I guess, to just fix, but I don't know. We got to come up with something, Nash. Although you just found out from your personality test, you're not such an inventor.
I'm not an inventor. I'm an orchestrator.
Which doesn't make sense to me, though, because you're smart in ideas and strategies. So why couldn't you invent something? I find that in conflict. Ask that in your session today.
Yeah, I will bring it up. And you and I both know that these tests are, they're just tests, right?
Yeah.
All right. So Shop Talk today is a article we found on queerty.com, and the headline reads, "Older gays tell youngins what dating and hooking up was like before the apps took over." Tim and I thought this was more of an opportunity to talk about some of the changes that apps and phones and social media have wrought, particularly dating and hooking up in the gay community is a big one. And the article was fun. It was somewhat predictable in that many people in our generation would say that it was probably better to do things in person. It was bars and clubs. You might have joined a gay volleyball league or something like that to meet people. Now, of course, you get ghosted. And back in the day, like, ghosting wasn't really a thing. Like, someone might not show up for a date, and that was rare.
Right.
But, you met somebody at a bar and, you struck a conversation. Maybe you went home with them. Maybe you didn't. Who knows? But, a lot of people struck up great friendships just out on the town looking for love, right?
Well, I thought the best line in the whole thing was you had to meet out doing things.
Yeah.
So you had to get out of the house and do things, right? You had to get out and meet out doing things. So as you said, whether you joined maybe an athletic league, or you joined a choir, or you were did volunteer work at a nonprofit, or met somebody through your church or whatever, you would meet people by going out and doing things. And then it says, now you can get it all done at 11 a.m. at work with the apps. And the other thing they said is this one guy talks about how he remembered being in P-Town when Grindr had just been released. And he said it was really when conversation died in groups. He said because all of a sudden everybody was on phones trying to, meet the latest and greatest or the next best thing. And I thought immediately to you and I, Las Vegas had hired us, probably 10 years ago.
Yeah, more than that, yeah.
Had hired John and I to do some LGBTQ advertising for them, and also use the show to let people know a lot of the goings-ons in Las Vegas, particularly at the Luxor hotels and some of the other convention places in the city. And they would put an itinerary together for John and I, and they sent us to what was to be the newest, latest, and greatest gay bar, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And you and I had gone in there all excited. You and I hadn't been out certainly anywhere after 9 o'clock. And and so long, you and I go in there, and we're shocked that everybody was walking around looking. I don't even think you and I brought our phones.
Like zombies. They were glued to their screens.
And everyone was just walking around looking at phones. And I was like, what is going on? Nobody's talking.
Nope.
And they were all looking on their phones, I guess, trying to track somebody down. It was the weirdest thing to me. But I've also seen this, and on the bigger picture happen. I was at an alumni event, and I think I mentioned this to you. It could be considered a networking thing, but same sort of thing. All of us older alums were standing around with a cocktail chatting, and anyone born or went to school or graduated after, say, 2005 or 6 were in the corner on their phones, just looking at their phones. And one of the women, I remember one of the women looked at me and goes, "They have no idea what they're missing. These kids could be over here getting a job or,
Networking.
Networking. Yeah. It was the oddest thing.
I appreciated the article, and you nailed all my favorite points, particularly the guy that was in P-Town when Grindr hit. We called it critical mass, and suddenly that was the weekend that conversation died, and everybody's glued to their phones. Random was the name of the game, right? And you could meet anybody, and it doesn't always have to lead to a hookup or a date or something. It could just be that you were talking. You had the courage to walk to someone in the bar. In the article, one guy talked about working in a mall. Right. When he was younger, and he met most of the people he knew through the mall, or one guy says, if you're out in real life and you're in a grocery store in San Francisco near the Castro, you could assume a lot of the people in the produce section or in the whole store are gay. It just took you the courage to walk up and actually say something or introduce yourself, and those are, I think, really critical things, right? So how to socialize,
right.
how to break the ice. So it goes even beyond this dating and hooking up thing. But
it's the randomness of it, as you mentioned. When you were growing up in Manhattan, and you and your friends just decided what's the place you used to like? Was it
Uncle Charlie's?
No, Caliente Cab Company or something. Wasn't it a
you're
Mexican
talking about
restaurant?
Banditos.
But you would all say you're going there.
Yeah.
And that was that. So you might have decided that on Tuesday, and so Friday evening you all showed up there, and there was a randomness of you going out to get there. You might have bumped into somebody else. You might have saw someone along the way. Oh, come meet us. We're meeting friends for dinner. Come along. It's the same thing. I was talking to people with college kids now. You used to wander downtown to go get a beer or to see what's going on. And again, it was the same thing. Meet us downtown at 10 o'clock. Now they send one kid out. They say it's beat because everybody's back in their rooms texting you back, nobody's out, so you stay in your room. And so they're trying to get kids out socializing, even on college campuses, aside from the LGBTQ thing, is just difficult. The social media has really made people unsocial.
Which is it's so funny to have that as the moniker for social media.
Right.
And you're right about
social media has made everybody unsocial.
I remember in the early days, and to your point about this idea of just going out and meeting because that's the plan, and you had to deal with answering machines and all this stuff to change the plan. We would show up at bars that were dead boring, and then someone would go to the jukebox and say, "Hey, folks!" And they would put a bunch of music in, and then suddenly it's a party, right? And people that would come in start laughing, and you're not the only ones there, and the bartender was cool. It's like the bartender out in Vegas, the bar you mentioned. When you and I went up to get drinks, and we were like, "Hey, what is?" He goes, "Oh, this is the way it is." Guy was the super handsome bartender. No one's paying attention to him, right? Because he's just serving the drink to someone.
They're all
looking
to see who's coming, or who might be at the next, who might be outside. Mm-hmm. Or who might be somewhere else, rather than looking at people were bumping into each other. I remember because they had their faces on the phone.
It was so weird. It was the first thing we commented on was like, this is not the way it should be. I remember going to Uncle Charlie's with my friend Steve, and we would watch Dynasty. It was like Wednesday night, Dynasty night. And, you would run into artists and bankers. All types of people would show up at Charlie's. They're gay. And everybody would be laughing when Crystal and Alexis would have one of their fights, and they'd end up in the fountain or the pool, and be all screaming. And then you'd look at someone and you strike up a conversation, right? Like, isn't this hysterical? Hey, what do you do? What do I do? Where do you live? Where do you?
Yeah.
I can't see how that happens on social media. Maybe I'm just a Luddite or a dinosaur, but.
Well, it's the same thing. You take it a step further. It's the same thing that's happened with the pandemic with Zoom meetings.
Yes.
You log into Zoom and you have your meeting and you move on. Whereas if you're actually in a room with somebody or walking to the meeting or bumping into somebody in the elevator, you might say, "How was your weekend?" Or, "Oh gosh, we went to a new restaurant in town. It was fantastic." Or, "Oh, what is it? Oh, it's, it was this. Or, oh, I love Thai food. Where is it? Oh, we're going to go again this week. Would you like to, why don't you meet us there? Blah, blah, blah. All that randomness, as you mentioned, just doesn't seem to happen anymore, which I think is too bad, but I guess that's the way it is. And that's really the gist of the story, is the randomness and the work that you had to do to actually go out and be visible and be engaged and socialize just doesn't happen anymore, because you can get it done at 11 o'clock at your desk, as he said.
Tap, 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 tap. I got my booty call at 6 tonight when I get home from the office.
Yeah. Right. Maybe people are saving money. Because you don't have to go out, right?
Maybe this is the crew that lives in the $700 a month capsule, you know.
The pod in San Fran.
Pods in San Fran, yeah.
So, well, that was a good article. I'm glad you pulled that up. Thanks for as we are heading toward, my goodness, John, we're in November already, which is shocking to me. Thanks all of you for listening to us here, as always, in our 15th year, I like to say, Mr. Nash.
And that's the number
15.
you're settled on, right?
Yeah, for now. Could be 16. Somebody a little Spike's age. Somebody
Don't you love Tim? Yeah, for now.
Well, I think 2008 is when we started, March 2008.
It is, yeah.
So is that 15? I think so. You and I have never been good at math.
Grammar either, but
yeah. So thanks for joining us, and thanks to our friends at Deep Discount. It is a site-wide sale going on at Deep Discount. John had picked the movie The Nightmare Before Christmas. I had picked the movie Nebraska, and the new release this week is Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning Part 1, starring Tom Cruise. So be sure to head over to Deep Discount, start shopping away, and getting a jump start on your holiday shopping. Be sure while you're at Focus Group also to pay attention to our other media, which is our podcast, TFG Unbuttoned, which is released on Tuesdays. So you'll find all of it there at our website. And remember, don't text and drive. Arrive alive, crazies.
It's The Focus Group with Tim Bennett and John Nash. Accessible on all platforms. Subscribe, like, and rate us on your platform of choice. Learn more at focusgroupradio.com.
That was a stunning focus group.